In this lesson, I'm going to go over the very first thing you need to learn about the piano, which is to name both the white and the black keys. And I invite you to watch until the end because I'm going to provide a really important and free resource to help you reinforce what I'm going to show you in this video today. So let's just jump right into it. I'm going to give you the white keys first because they're the easiest to remember. Now, if you're completely new to piano, what I do want you to know is that the white keys are named based on alphabetical letters. So think of the letters from A to G. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's pretty much the 7 letters that the majority of Western music is based off of, regardless of what instrument. So piano is basically an easier way to understand how that works. So in music, usually the first letter or the first key that you learn is the key of C. Now, if you can find C, you can find all of the other keys in the piano, and I will show you how to reinforce how to learn or how to remember those keys. C is always going to be in the same spot. If you look at the black keys, they're in groups of 3, 2, 3, 2, so on and so forth, with these spaces in between. C is always going to be the white key that is to the left of the 2 black keys. So if you find these 2 black keys here, this white key to the left is C. And then likewise, if you find these 2 black keys here, you will have this C, but it's higher in tone because it's to the right. And then these guys over here, these 2 black keys, this white key over here is also C. It's just a lower version of C because it is to the left. So what happens is after C, if you go to the very next key, you run into D, like the alphabet. And then after D is E. After E is F. After F is G. And then what happens after G is that the alphabet resets, with the next key being the letter A. And then after A is B. And then as you might have noticed, it connects to the very next C. And then guess what happens? The alphabet just starts over again, where it's D, E, F, G. So even though this is a long piano, all that happens is just the same white keys repeat themselves over and over and over again. So between the white and the black keys, there's only 12 keys you have to think about. Everything else is just repeated either in higher tone or in lower tone. So a couple of things to keep in mind as you're working on familiarizing yourself with these keys. You want to use C as your first reference. So if you need to find, for example, E, a good way to practice your notes is maybe pick a random key, close your eyes, pick a random key, and let's say if you land on E, or let's say if you land on this key, and you have to figure out what this key is, what you can do is start with C, because remember the 2 black keys start with C, and then count your way up to that key. So you can do this for the other white keys, and then after a while, what happens is the more you familiarize yourself with these keys, the less you will need to use C as your reference point, because then you'll know your notes really well. And then after that, it's kind of like taking off the training wheels on a bike. So these notes, when you're putting a song together, you're referencing the names of the keys. So let's say if I was to do Mary Had a Little Lamb, I could do E, D, C, D, E, 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 and it would sound like this. Pretty much that's how the white keys are named. And before I get into the black keys, if you're looking for hands-on training, I have a link in the description box where I have 7-day access to my coaching intro series. So that's of interest to you. Just check out that link in the description box. Now, when it comes to the black keys, before you understand how the black keys work, we have to understand that there's this thing in music called half steps or half tones. Or I'm not even going to get into that. I might just make it simpler. So if you think about going from one key to the very next key, right? All I did was I just went from C, for example, and I went to the very next key, which is slightly higher in tone. So if I start with C, if I press this key, you'll hear it's a little bit higher, right? Any key that is an original key that has been altered or that has been shifted over one key to the right or one key higher, that new key becomes the sharp version of the original key. So what does that mean for this key? If I start with C, and if I go a key higher to this black key, I run into what is called C sharp, because this key is a half step or a key higher than the original key. Same thing happens with D. If I have D, and if I go one key over to the right or one key higher in tone, then I run into what is called D sharp. And then if I go over to, let's say, F, and if I go a key higher, I run into, or a key to the right, I run into F sharp. Same thing happens with G. If I go a key over to the right, I run into the black key G sharp. And then A, if I go a half key higher, I run into what is called A sharp. And then as always, the black keys repeat themselves the same way the white keys repeat themselves. So that is, again, if you're moving a key over to the right, that right key becomes the sharp of this key. Now, what happens if you go back to the original key, right? And if you go a key to the left or a key lower, then you run into what is called the flat. And by the way, the sharp is the thing that looks like a tic-tac-toe board or a hashtag in music. That's what a sharp looks like. The flat is the thing that looks like a little lowercase b in music. So let's go back to D, for example. We've already established that if we go a half step, or if we go a key, to the right, we run into what's called D sharp. But if we go back to the original key and we run into, or if we go a key over to the left or a key lower, we run into what is called D flat. So essentially what happens here is each of the black keys have two names. They have a sharp to it and they have a flat to it. So earlier we have already established that this black key is called C sharp because it's a key higher than C. At the same time, it's also a key lower than D, which is on this side, so it's also D flat. So if you go over to E, right, and if we go a key lower to this key or a key to the left, we run into what's called E flat. Likewise, what happens here with G, if we go G and if we go a key over to the left or a key lower, we run into G flat. And then here we have A, and if we go a key lower or a key to the left, we run into A flat. And here we have B. If we go a key lower to B, or lower than B, a key to the left, we run into B flat. One of the really important tools that you can use, I already promised I was going to talk about this. If you go to a website called www.musictheory.net, so it's not .com, it's musictheory.net. If you go on that website, and it's Music Theory, so musictheory.net. If you go on there, you will see a ton of resources where it will help you practice, and they'll have like these cute little practice exercises where you can practice naming your white keys and also naming the black keys. It'll have display of the keyboard, and it'll light up the keys that you have to name, and you can just use that. If you practice this maybe like for 5 or so minutes a day, just naming your keys, within a week or two, you'll have known these keys so well that you won't even have to practice them anymore. You'll kind of just know them. So if this was really helpful to you, please like and share and subscribe. Also, before you leave, if you want to learn more about piano, again, I do have a future video coming up. It's going to be like a next part of the video where I'm going to go over technique and posture in terms of how to, position your hands to be able to play at faster speeds. That will be a future video. If you're watching this and that video has been published already, I will have it in the end screen of this video. That way, if it's already up there, you can just click on the next screen and it'll take you right to the next lecture or the next part of this introductory series. If you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the comment section and I will be more than happy to help you guys. And thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in a future video.